Hiya, folks. Social media is a nasty place, and it's a place I don't visit all that often, but because of the work I'm in, the line of work I do, I kind of have to have a Facebook account and a Twitter account. And it's hard not to see things, especially when they come up on the top of your feed. I try to post and get away. My God, people are mean. It's really distressing to see people wishing pain and misery upon others. There's so much, people post something about a Trump supporter who died of coronavirus, and it's like, yay, isn't that great? And just a few minutes ago, I saw a Buddhist teacher wishing that, this thing that went around where Trump supposedly said drink Clorox to kill coronavirus or some sort of thing, mainline it, I don't know. And the Buddhist teacher says in a comment, I hope some of his supporters do this and take this advice. And that's just, that's really distressing. And I hope none of you out there are doing that kind of thing, because there's no good reason to do it. And you don't know. You don't know that you're right. And if you understood who you were really wishing pain and misery upon, you might think again about wishing pain and misery upon them. Because there ain't nobody out there but you. On to more pleasant stuff. I continue to read Kodo Sawaki's commentary of the Song of Awakening, which was translated by my friend Tonen O'Connor from French. It obviously was originally written in Japanese, and then it was translated into French. Tonen got a hold of the French translation and translated it into English. And then a friend of hers, Shohaku Okumura, the esteemed master, looked over the English translation, compared it to the Japanese, and said, that looks good to me, so we can say that it's a good translation from the original Japanese. And the other day I came across a passage starting on page 132 that I would like to read to you. Pretend it's like bedtime stories from Brad. It starts with a quote from the poem from the Song of Awakening that he is commenting on, and here it goes. Entering the deep mountains, I live in a hermitage, under a great pine on a steep peak overhanging the abyss. I sit tranquilly and without care in my humble abode, silent retreat, serene simplicity. Isn't that nice? Here's what Kodo Sawaki says. It's a mistake to think that the mountain is an ideal place to find calm. I knew an abbot who'd made this choice. He yawned constantly. Oh, how long the days are. If only a visitor would think to bring me some sushi. It might be a good idea to live deep in the mountains if they weren't infested with demons ceaselessly prowling in the vicinity. They quickly visit, and the solitude doesn't last long. The hermitage we're talking about here is in a place so isolated that you don't even hear the lowing of a cow, and where there is no human trace. Dogen Zenji said, the dusts of the worlds do not reach it. In this place, the snow falls in silence. Man is motionless. What world is this? It's a world of man alone with himself, within his deep mountain where he withdraws from the noise and activities of life. A world where he sees no one. When they speak of an isolated place, I always think of the toilet. There also, it's the deep mountain. No one. No link with anything. Alone with yourself. Such is the way of authentic religion. When we're face to face with someone, we go on stage and play a role. The majority of things we do under the eyes of others, but the place where no one sees you, where you come to grips with yourself, this is your deep mountain. Further on he says, we should be able to enter the deep mountain no matter where we are, even on a train. The toilet's not the only place we can find isolation and be completely ourself. The mountain is everywhere. When one is without birth and without thought, one seeks nothing. There is no longer either joy or sorrow, neither attraction nor repulsion. If things still divide into that one loves and those that one does not love, it's a village. not the deep mountain. So dividing things into that which one loves and that which one doesn't love, that's what you're doing if you're on Facebook celebrating the death of a Trump supporter who died of COVID-19, or wishing misery of injecting Clorox upon people who, like the president. That's nonsense, and that's not the Buddhist way, and we have to be very careful. And a lot of people lately, there's one sort of statement I hear a lot from people, which is that this self-isolation stuff is kind of like a retreat. And yeah, in some ways it is. A lot of us are completely alone. I am lucky enough that I have a girlfriend, and her mother and father live next door, and so I'm seeing and interacting with people almost every day, even in the isolation. But I have friends who are completely isolated, who are really seeing no one, and that's got to be really difficult, because we're not creatures who do that as a routine. Even when we go on a retreat, one of the things about a Zen retreat is, and I've mentioned this before, people would ask me about solitary retreats. And since I talked about this last, I did come across a reference to a person who did a solitary retreat in the context of Zen, and it was in this book by Kodo Sawaki. But generally speaking, we don't do that. That's in the Tibetan tradition, it's sort of a thing that people do. But in the Zen tradition, we normally gather in a group and do our retreats and try not to get in each other's way. But there is that tradition that goes back even further than the origins of Zen, of people like Bodhidharma, who sat alone in a cave, and they have him sitting for 9 years alone. And that doesn't mean he sat constantly for the entire 9 years, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'm sure he got up and went to the bathroom and got himself something to eat. But what it means is that he devoted himself for 9 years to doing nothing but zazen, and he did this in a cave. I'm sure he had to come down to a village and find some food every once in a while, and he must have interacted with people now and then, but he was mostly on his own retreat. And we can make this a time for doing that, but not everybody has that luxury. I'm lucky. I have that luxury, that privilege of being able to do that, and some of you do, but not everybody does. And to disparage those who don't have that privilege, who are living hand to mouth, I saw a thing where this coronavirus lockdown is really adversely affecting people back where I used to live in Nairobi, Kenya, and they're worried that within a few months people will be starving there because they can't go out and farm or do the things that they did to make their livelihood. And I lived there, and there are people in this country too who do this, but there are a lot of people in Africa who are just living day to day. Like, if they get some money today, they use that money to buy food today, and tomorrow you got to go do it over again. They don't have any savings or anything like that. So be kind to those people, because their frustrations are real, and the hope that they cling to in anything is the same thing you're doing. It's the same thing I'm doing. We put our hope in science, but who knows if science is going to save us this time. I hope it does, but, don't... Just please be kind to people. That is all I ask, even strangers on the internet. I hope people... I don't think a lot of people listen to me for advice, but if anybody listens to me for advice, that's the advice I'd like to give. And as Kodo Sawaki says, the true solitude is everywhere, even in the place where you don't think of it as a solitary place. If you're lucky enough to have a solitary place to work on yourself during this period, take advantage of that. If you don't, do what you can and carry on and hold on. I believe we're going to get through this. I very much believe we're going to get through this. Not completely unscathed, but I think we'll get through it. And in the meantime, being kind to each other is the most important thing we have. It really is. So please remember that. Okay, that's all I got. My PayPal and Patreon links are below. I always have to say that because that is how I make my living, and that is what I depend on. And thank God most people who supported me before this lockdown happened are still supporting me. Some of you have had to drop out. Don't worry about that. That's fine. It'll be okay. Don't feel obligated. Don't feel pity for me, and it's going okay. I thank you a lot for your continued support, and thank you for viewing, and be nice to people, even strangers, on the internet. Thanks.